it's the same as abandoned property. Anybody could go through your garbage cans, believe it or not. There's no law against it. I can't stop it. There's still protections that these folks have that we can't stop as much as we like. I always like saying I'm all for a police state as long as I can be the police, but I don't want my rights violated as much as anybody else. And believe me, the city can't afford a civil rights lawsuit if we harass everybody that's on a bicycle or everybody that's carrying a backpack. You know, it's just not everybody that's doing it. We know, as the police department, who our knuckleheads are. I mean, and you guys know too. I mean, how many times are the same people every couple months in our arrest summary for being arrested for the same thing? But I'm sure Patrick and Josh will talk about it in a little bit. You know, the pot's only so big, and it costs thousands of dollars to do jury trials and everything, and not everybody's going to go to jail. The judges have regulations of how many, you know, how they sentencing guidelines and stuff like that, and it's frustrating. And believe it's frustrating for us to keep on having to arrest these people and do the same paperwork over and over again too. But I just wanted to open up before before anyone has questions that though it might seem, you know, that we have those problems, there's rules that we have to engage in too, and we just can't stop people from walking in the alleys at 3 in the morning. Now, granted, they should probably, you know, there's probably a good chance they are, and we do stop them when we talk to them. But if they tell us to pound sand that, well, you can't search my backpack, or you can't, you know, I'm not talking to you, and we have no reason to prove it, that's fine. We also had a person had a, you know, complaint, or a neighbor had a complaint that someone was shining a light in someone else's window and we didn't do nothing about it. Well, I don't want to answer every single one of those calls on social media, but the last one that we had was the boyfriend trying to get a hold of the girlfriend, you know, so she could sneak out. You know, they're juveniles. I don't want to, you know. So it wasn't the you know, burglar trying to, you know, shine into the window, you know. But on the other token, I'm glad people are calling. You know, if you saw on the paper, Channel 6 had it on there, the 5-star robbery the other night in Paducah. We caught him tonight here in Metropolis. That's why I still got my vest on. We arrested him this afternoon. But that's because of a tip from a citizen. Hey, this guy looked like, you know what I'm saying? You know, in the last 3 crimes, well, I even put it in the paper last week. You know, a citizen called and reported, you know, the burglar where we arrested Larry Rieger. You know, that was a neighbor looking out the window saying, hey, I know. It turned out to be the mother, I think, of one of our aldermen whose house it was. You know, I know she's at work. You know, there shouldn't be somebody in that shed. By the time we got there, we caught him in the shed. He tried to run. He didn't get far. We arrested him. We found proceeds on his body. And, you know, so, I mean, we had a good case, but we would have never had that if the neighbor didn't call. And I really want to stress that, you know, whether we have 15 officers or 500 officers, we can't be everywhere at once. So it is important for you to call. And I promise you, if one of the dispatchers get rude with you or one of the officers gets indignant because he got called to a false call, then it's my turn. You know, I'll deal with that. All right?
Well, can I ask you, because you're talking about shining a light in the house, we have had that next door to us. It's an empty house. And they've been at Ray's and Tammy's down there, and then he's got a picture, and they're shining it all up in the house, and it's empty. Now, if we called about something like that, and he actually was shining a light in an empty house, is there anything you could do? Or
there's no law against it. I mean, there's nothing to prosecute him for.
Right.
But we'll identify him.
Yeah.
You know, he'll be added into the log.
Yeah.
And it might help us later on so that when the other neighbor wakes up and realizes her gnome is stolen or her glass globe is stolen or her car was rifled too, it gives us a starting point. It might not be the guy, but, you know, us interviewing him is probably going to determine if he didn't do it from doing anything further. It doesn't hurt, you know. It's just that we have constitutional guidelines that we have to go by also that we just can't stop, you know. Stop and frisk is a good law that worked in New York for a while and with Rudy Giuliani, but you saw how the courts reacted to it. You know, this ain't New York, but and we kind of do some of that, you know, but, you know, usually it's people that we know that shouldn't be out at 3 in the morning or shouldn't be in that neighborhood because they live down on 2nd Street or something, and we're up on 8th Street or something, you know, but there's a lot of stuff.
So if we see a person like riding a bicycle, but they're got a hold of another bicycle, taking it with them, is that something we should call on? Because, you know, very likely that one, I mean,
Yeah,
why would
chances
that
are,
happen?
unless the other one was drunk and fell off and he forgot about him.
Well, that could happen too.
I mean, there's probably, I mean, that's a suspicious incident, you know, we'll check those out, you know, and he might have a perfect, you know, hey, my, you know, son got in trouble, he was grounded, shouldn't have been out, he ran home and he left his bike at his friend's house and I'm bringing it back, you know, I mean, if there's a reason for it, you know, we can deal with that, you know, we'll clear in a couple seconds and, you know, no harm, no foul, you know.
Well, I do want to say that after our last meeting, the very next night, there was kids out there, and I think they were getting ready to fight, and the F word was flying everywhere and screaming and going on, and I did call the police because I was afraid there really was going to be a fight, and there was a group of them, and they were there just like that. And the kids, by that time, moved to the other end. They went down and stopped them and talked to them. So, I mean, you all came immediately when I called. 2 cars came, as a matter of fact.
You know, and I haven't handled one complaint this year where they said the police didn't even come, where I couldn't show the person on what we call CAD, computer-aided dispatch. It gives the times are stamped into the computer entry when the call comes in, when it's dispatched, and when we arrive, you know. And I haven't found one call yet where the officers just didn't go. Now, we might be tied up. Like when we were tied up this afternoon with the armed robber, you know, there was a lady calling because she was having a custody fight, you know, and she was upset that we couldn't get out there. You know, it wasn't something physical that we could drop everything either, you know, she just wanted to get her stuff and it just wasn't a good time for us to do it. We were tied up, you know, so she was upset that we don't do anything, you know.
Well, I think we all do, and like I say, this is not any indication that we don't think y'all doing your job or whatever. But I think people would like to know too, like what exactly we can do. What would be legally that we could do, or as far as just protecting our house. I mean, some of us know get cameras, lights, whatever. But if you just kind of go over that with everybody and tell them the best way to protect their home, and tell them what the laws are. I mean, you know, like somebody might think they could shoot out at that person, and they can't.
If you're in Florida, you might be able to.
Well,
not here. Right.
So just kind of update them on that, on things that we're allowed to do and what we.
I'll let the state's attorney talk the legalese. You know, but call us if you have any concerns. Call us. You know, if we're tied up, we're going to tell you we're tied up, and we'll prioritize it. But we'll get there. Yeah. You know, I'd rather ease your concerns than you just sit at home and stew and think nothing's being done. You know, like I said, we don't have 50 officers working on the street, so we have to prioritize what we're doing. But you know, I promise you, we'll get there. You know.
Well, also there was a thing about private citizens being able to have some kind of little task force or something, but that they couldn't carry guns to help the police. I mean, they'd work together. Is that anything that we could? I know somebody said you have to pass
Neighborhood Watch is a copyrighted.
So that's the best way to do it.
But you know, Neighborhood Watch. If you want to do Neighborhood Watch, you got to pay fees. You know, because Neighborhood Watch is a business. You know, you got to buy your signs through them and all that stuff. I mean, but there's nothing wrong with a couple citizens grabbing a cell phone and walking around their neighborhood. I mean, if it's okay for someone else to walk in the alley at 4 o'clock, it's okay for you to walk in the alley.
Yeah.
But
not to get arrested.
That's how you're dressed.
Well, then, yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing is we really want to know what we can do, what we are able to do. You know, I've always thought about going down certain places. I used to try to get Glenda, I could sit there all night where there had been some trouble, but we're too scared to do it. But anyway, we had talked about it. I didn't know if some of the guys, maybe sometime if, you know, maybe together and check out a certain neighborhood.
And cameras are your best friends.
Okay.
You know, you just got to remember with motion detectors, if it's a dog running through your yard or a raccoon or a deer, it's going to go off too. So it doesn't always mean or a cat. It doesn't always mean it's a bad guy, you know. And there's just sometimes people cut through your yards, you know. So the last thing we want is someone getting shotgun blasted because they're just taking a shortcut home. You know? But like I said, I'll let
Josh or Patrick or
Okay,
whoever wants to talk
okay.
about the legal
Well, we met
rights
with
of
Josh
protection.
and Patrick the other night for just a little all one-on-one kind of meeting, and really enjoyed their talk, and I figured that everybody else would like to hear what they have to say, especially about the one thing we had talked about that you said that you were going to try to get that, take some law they'd passed, and is that the where they pay $30 a day, and you were going to try to get that revoked. You might want to tell them about that.
Sure, you can talk about that right now.
Mr. Adams had a question first.
Oh, we'll go there.
I want to compliment the police department because in the last year and a half, my lot next to Rent One's been broke into 6 times. They got in my cargo carrier, got my impact tools, drills, and a lot of other stuff. And when I called the police, they were there pretty quick.
Yeah.
They cut a hole in my fence in the back to crawl through. I parked my Ranger bass boat there one time where they stripped it. And but they come down there and I got to watch them when they fingerprinted my boat. And but then when they started stealing from my house, and I lost 3 tanks to my grill, a bunch of other stuff. But and I had 2 police cars there at one day at noon when they stole stuff out of my front yard and my wife was home alone. That's when I called you. I put in new windows in my house. I've got cameras. The company that put them in, they record and keep the recordings for 15 days and everything, you know. But this law they've got, they were supposed to, that I've heard about, they passed last January. And like, if they can't make bond,
No.
they go back to jail for 5 days. The citizens pay $38 and some cents because they have to pay $8 and some cents to feed them each day. And then $30 a day goes to a $150 bond. And they turn them loose. Well, you got the same, I've noticed 5 guys in the papers, same ones all the time. Can't you make a work camp? I've been told.
What happened to the boys' camp out there?
I've been told that they didn't have room in the jails. Well, we got another jail. We cleaned it out up above that courthouse. They got stuff stored in there. Make them clean it out. But like my little grandmother says, if you can't earn the respect, make them fear you. And when my wife's home alone and they steal stuff from my place, you guys do all you can. But when they turn them loose after 5 days, they're out there again. And after so many times, it only comes a time when something else worse is going to happen. They're going to elevate the broadcast the same way they do with drugs, marijuana, cocaine, and keep on going up. They'll do the same thing in stealing because they're not afraid to. Because they'll go in 5 days rest in the jail, released. But now my cameras, I've got a guy that I've been watching on my camera. He wears a hoodie. You know where I live, that my back gate back there, he stands by the post because I put it on Facebook that I've got cameras and everything. And I watch him, and he's smoking cigarettes. There's a pile of cigarette butts back there at the alley. And I'm watching him. He don't come on my property, but I'm watching him. And, but, you know, these guys aren't scared. You're going to have to put fear in their hearts. That's what my little grandmother always said. Now, if they come into my house, my wife's there, I will put fear in their hearts till I can get you guys there.
Well, that's a worry for them to enter your house.
Well, yeah,
because
I had
a
elderly
friend
people
that they
calling
have.
me and say, Butch, somebody's banging on my door or window. Well, they're there by themselves,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I had a friend that they went in her house twice, and so she wasn't home. But what if she would have walked in on them? You
That's
know,
right.
and that's why I was worried that it could get worse if they've got a gun or
It
whatever.
will, because they will elevate. They'll keep getting worse and worse. That's only a matter of time. Because they're not afraid.
Yeah, yeah.
But that, we've got an Illinois State Representative here now.
Yes.
And now,
Pulling double duty tonight.
full double, you get up there and you go after them.
Well,
Governor and everything.
yeah.
And if you need a backup, I don't mind backing you up.
I know who to call.
But, yeah, you know who to call. But we need to do something to protect the citizens here.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I mean, the trend in the law right now is to make penalties less
Mhm.
and to make it easier for people to be released from jail. And it's going to be tough to change. I've, of course, been to Springfield once, talked to some people there. I had some ideas, still have some ideas I'm going to push for. But the chairman of the committee, he basically said, we're not gonna have any penalty increases come out of our criminal justice committee.
Yeah.
Which means you can't increase the penalties for crimes or make it more severe for people who have committed a crime. And they control the committee. Now I'm hoping that I'll be persuasive enough, and others will be, that we can get this changed. But the thing we've talked about here, and I'll kind of set it up for you a little bit, it deals with bond. Now, I want to give you a couple statistics where we talk about more recent times. I think it's important to know where we're at. In my mind, there's a perception and a reality. Perception is that crime is running rampant, I think, as the chief said, in our community. And the reality is that that's not true. Now, there is a reality that we have a drug problem. There's no doubt about that. But one of the benefits I've had in running for this office is I've been able to go to Vienna and Harrisburg, Cairo, Carbondale, Anna, knock on doors, talk to people, and they'll tell me the same things that we're going to hear here tonight. Their communities are suffering the same way. And some of it's economic. We have to have more jobs, more opportunities here. But we also have to address a drug problem. But when we talk about a drug problem, the people sitting up here can only do part of the job. It really takes a community to address the problem. And we will need help. You cannot arrest your way or prosecute your way out of drug addiction because there's just too many people who are drug addicted. That's why we have rehabilitation centers and mental health facilities. But let me talk about some statistics and then the bond, and we can go from there. Now, the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority keeps statistics for the crime rate in every county in Illinois. So from 1982, which is their first year for statistics, until 2016, which is their last year, the crime rate in Massac County dropped by 26%. Now, I think most everybody here would assume that in 1982, things were a lot better in Massac County, a lot more peaceful, quieter, but the statistics don't bear that out. It's basically, if you look at over time, crime in Massac County is about the same as it's been for 30 years. Now, the drug issue is a problem, and it's probably gotten worse since 1982. One of the things more recently that's made it worse has been the use of needles and syringes, which we know creates a public health problem, and we have to address it. Because that's, not only is the addict hurting themselves, and they're potentially hurting other people when they don't dispose of those properly. So, okay, exactly, that's the danger, that's the worry. So those statistics were 2016, but I ended up being state's attorney at the end of 2018, earlier this month actually. And we noticed last year the number of cases we filed skyrocketed. And why was that? Well, beginning in January 1st, let me back up. Before 2018, if you were arrested for a crime, you were brought before a judge, you had a bond set, and if you posted that bond, you were released. If you couldn't post it, you sat in jail until trial. Sometimes a judge may release you without money on a recognizance. But if somebody was drug addicted, they would be in jail, and we would try, if they had not committed a violent crime, we'd try to get them drug treatment and maybe get them a fresh start on things. Well, beginning this year, we have a new law which says if you're arrested for a non-violent crime, beginning in 18, if you're arrested for a non-violent crime, you receive $30 a day on your bond. Now, it's not money the government pays to you, but your bond just goes down until it reaches zero, and then you're released. So if somebody walks into Big John's, steals an item, walks out the door and gets arrested, right there, they go to jail. By Supreme Court rule, that bond is $150 cash. So that means that within 5 days, that person will be out. They commit the crime again, arrested, 5 days out. Of course, this court system can't process a case normally within 5 days. In fact, we had about 200 or so more felonies last year filed, over 200 misdemeanors filed. That put us over 400 cases. So it's going to take us a while to process that amount of cases. So this was the problem, and this is still the problem. This is what I hope to address, is to convince them if somebody commits a crime and they get the bond credit because people believe they deserve a second chance, fine. But if they commit another crime, the bond credit ends. There's no more getting to keep that revolving door, because it's frustrating for everybody up here. It's frustrating for the community. You know what, in some ways, the people who are drug addicted, it's hard on them too, because many of them are only off drugs when they're incarcerated. And you know, a lot of people who are addicted want to get help. They just don't have the strength to get the help at the time. So that was one of the main things I wanted to say, and I'm glad we got it out of the way here fairly early. But there are ways, there are avenues as a community for us to work together. You know, it's not the police's fault, the sheriff's fault, the mayor's fault, city attorney's fault, state's attorney's fault. It's us coming together as a community, looking for solutions and how we can address this. We've got great organizations in our community that want to help, that are doing everything they can to help. We've got churches, civic organizations, and I would encourage everybody here to get involved with those. I know not everybody has the time to do it, but if you do have the time, please do it. Because they and we need ideas to address this. We also need more resources to address it, and that's one of the things I'll hope to do when I get to Springfield is to help with those resources.
One more thing. You know, when you arrest somebody for drugs or theft or whatever, it's on your police, on your internet,
Right.
and it's in the paper. What about putting a billboard up there with their pictures and their addresses and everything else on it, on the courthouse square where everybody comes around and see it, and then these people see it and say, hey, you know, since I put that on Facebook, that, you know, I told you what I did at my house, that I had that security system and all this, you know I haven't had one more problem, and that's been over 6 months. But so that tells me they've got internet,
Yeah.
and so,
But I don't need to disagree with you, because I think there is an effort, as we kind of talked about, to shame people into maybe not violating the law, but a lot of people are violating the law. That is no deterrent to them. Even the risk of arrest isn't often a deterrent for many
my
of
little
them.
grandmother always used keen switches, and
I'd love to do that.
Go out and get it off the tree.
but they need to do something like that. Well, there's going to come a day, these ones that are mild thefts, you know, and they're going to hurt somebody.
I would like,
There was a woman in the back that had hand up, and then I didn't see.
When people are talking, could they please stand up and speak loudly? Please.
Hi, I'm Terry, and I've kind of experienced this from both sides. I have a child who's currently incarcerated and has been incarcerated, and one of the things I have a question for Patrick is, they closed a lot of the drug rehab prisons. I only know of Sheridan. Do you know if they have any plans? Because one of the things you can do with these people is send them down to a rehab program that they do get better. It might take a couple times, but they will get better. And again, lights, motion detectors, and cameras, your best defense. Not guns, not knives. I'm a fan of cattle prods, but that's about it. But nothing extremely violent. But what's happening with the prisons, with these rehab prisons, and maybe not give them felonies, but give them misdemeanors. You know how hard it is to get a job when you have a felony.
Well, the first point, the person has to have a felony to go to prison. We couldn't send them there with a misdemeanor now. We can only put them in
jail
detention.
versus prison.
Yeah, that's right. There is, as I talked about the trend in the law, there's also a trend in state government to incarcerate fewer people in prison. They want to, former Governor Rauner had a proposal to reduce the prison population by 25%. I would guarantee you that Governor Pritzker is going to continue along that trend. So that means they want fewer people in prison who have committed drug offenses and low-level, non-violent felonies. They only want violent felons in prison, essentially what they're saying. Basically, the resources are not there in DOC for drug rehab. What we had run into actually was inmates weren't wanting that on their sentences. Initially, they were wanting it, but because there were so few opportunities for drug treatment, in order for them to get their good time credit, they had to complete the treatment, and they couldn't get into the facility to get it, so they were serving about 6 months longer than they would have without that order. It's a resource issue, like a lot of things we're going to talk about. It's a resource issue, and it does not appear that DOC is going to expand on that.
Prevention, not reactive.
Now, she asked about other treatment places. Well, Lifeway, I went with Joe Neely. I went over there several months working with those people, but it costs there. And there used to be one in Anna. And
Yes,
it
there
don't-
is still a fellowship houses in Anna.
Yeah, there's one there, but this 60 days, that ain't going to do it.
Well, I agree.
90 days, that isn't going to do it. You know that.
Somebody who's addicted to meth or a serious opiate is going to need to be 6 months at least, probably a year. And most of those are not going to be paid by the government. Medicaid is not going to pay for that amount of time in treatment. Most of those are going to religious-based facilities, are going to Paducah, to Centerpoint.
Because they use those people and then work them in different
Right.
places so they can earn their way to do that program.
Well, and you also would hope that with the rehabilitation, there would be some job training or life skills training, so that way they have a life to build after they get out, not turn back to what was going on.
Oh, go ahead, Peter.
Mayor Billy and I think Harry Massey, tell them about Teen Challenge. That's what, 2.5 years? Is that what it's called?
It varies, but in Teen Challenge is not easy to get into by any means, but it is an alternative place that you can go at a reasonable cost. But Teen Challenge, I mean, you can get a few. The few really, really want to go. It's not mandatory. They can't make them stay. So most of the time, when you get to Teen Challenge, you probably hit the bottom. Call it fortunately or unfortunately, ever what you want to call it. We're fortunate in the city of Metropolis. We actually have 2 excellent employees that is good as any I've ever seen. Dedicated, good young men. Both of them had completed Teen Challenge. And at certain times, those 2 young men, make me almost ashamed to be what I am, because they have overcome a severe obstacle. They're dedicated. They're good to their other, and they're just good people. If you ever get the opportunity, you should go to one of the churches and hear the testimony from, one of them. I know he doesn't care, and I'm proud of him if he was my own son, is Michael Gentry, local family, Jane Ann and Bobby Gentry's son. Fine young man, just got married, have a child of his own now. But there is help out there, but the worst thing about the drugs, I think, is you got to want to do it. It's no different, I don't think, than smoking or alcohol addiction, except it's 10 times worse. But addiction's addiction. I mean, there's a lot of different addiction, but there is help out there. But the main thing is we as citizens, and I'm not going to say elected leaders or whatever, we're elected people. We try to be leaders many times, but it takes help from the community to get these people into that facility. But it is a good facility. It will help. There's not room for all of them by any means, but now that just to let you, from the last meeting we had to this meeting, we've changed a lot of different things that we're doing in the city of Metropolis. I used to be the type of guy, I have never instructed Harry. Harry's the chief of police. I'm not a police officer. I don't know the duties. I don't know the procedure. He does. I expect Harry to do what I've hired him to do. And he is accountable to me. I'm proud of what the city does. I think we have great officers. But when we had our last meeting, I told Mr. Massey, I said, from now on, there will be no silent stops. I never was the type of guy that wanted all the sirens and lights are flashing and stuff because I thought maybe it's, well, we've changed that. Every police stop in the city of Metropolis, I want every light they got on. I want the radios blaring. I want the lights flashing. I want the citizens to know that they're out doing the best that they can do. I've instructed them, I don't want any longer to see these bicycles running up and down the street. It's not against the law now to ride bicycle, but it is against the law of the night to ride that dang bicycle out there with no lights or anything like that. Stop them. If you have to, put the bike down. If you want to take them home, take them home. I don't care. But we need to make police presence with the facility and the amount of officers that we have. Make yourself visible. And you know, there's not many people sitting in this audience I probably haven't known all my life. You know, and we've all got the good and the bad and ugly about all of us. But the worst thing that in our community, I think, is the younger or the older that has no support, family support and stuff like that. And I think they are. They're fearful. You know, I have a daughter, just like this young lady at our last meeting. She was fearful for her children. That's a bad feeling to have. You know, and I hate that. I hate that for my community. And I was born and raised here like everybody else. But it's going to take a community to get out of this. We can all help each other. Be a visual of what's going on around your neighborhood. If you know you got an elderly person or a young lady, young man, be their eyes and ears in that community. And I promise you, if you call the police department, they'll do the very best they can do to get there. They can't answer every call. It's impossible. And you know, I can speak, I'm proud of my community. I'm not proud of everything that goes on in my community by any means. There's a whole lot of stuff that goes on I don't like. But I'm still proud of the people and you know, the communication of what we've got here and stuff like that. It can only get better if we stick together. Sheriff Holder is a fine Christian gentleman, you know, and I know he's doing the very best that he can do. This is his community too. You know, Josh is newly appointed. I know Josh's character. I know what he's made of. I know he's a good, you know, Christian young family man. He's got a family too. You know, and the gentleman I was talking about a while ago is actually his brother-in-law. So he knows what Michael Gentry's made out of too, and what he's gone through with his family. And we're very fortunate in the city of Metropolis to have our own personal representative. You know, how many communities can you say that? You know, besides Metropolis. And he will do a great job for us. Is he going to change everything overnight? Absolutely. He's one voice in Springfield. But he can help. But he's going to help because what we tell him to go back with. And so I'm Mr. Abel, you know, is our city attorney, corporate counsel, whatever what you call him. Mr. Abel's a fine Christian young man too. I'm proud to say everybody's sitting at this table, you know, knows the Lord and they're Christians. That don't make them any better or anybody, but it does make us want to do what's best for our community. And I wish there was more that we could do. You know, as far as what's going on here, I'm proud of everybody that came out. It does show us, you know, that we do have interest in our community. You know, we have an alderman, Mr. Carroll, sitting out here that actually served the city of Metropolis for over 20 years. Mr. Carroll is very proud of his community. Spent many, many years, you know, in city government and things like that. We got a lot of help. We just got to all work together because there's not one of us that's big enough or strong enough to take this on by ourselves. When I was growing up, until the Vietnam era, I never knew what a marijuana cigarette was. I never knew what drugs were. And you know, it's a little thing, you know, in things we go to, I can certainly understand an individual smoking a marijuana cigarette. I can. I don't smoke. I've never smoked a marijuana cigarette. I can understand it. I can't understand the meth and things like that that's just tearing whole communities, families, just destroying them. And I don't know how you tackle something like that. I really don't know. You know, but anyway, I'm gonna shut up now. I do thank everybody for coming in.
We thank you
I'm
all
sure
for coming.
Ted's
We
just really
appreciate
dying to
it.
say something.
You want to touch on the deadly force thing that they kind of skirted over?
We have a gentleman right there, two of them right there.
Can community service be pushed a little more for some of this instead of jail time or anything like that? Is that something that'll be beneficial or not?
Yeah, it can be, and that generally occurs when somebody is placed on probation, and that's a condition of their probation is to do public service work. Now there are some limitations there because of resources. Number one, you have to have the location where they can do the public service work. And that sounds easy. You may think, well, we've got tons of places where somebody could do public service work, but there's got to be somebody also that is there to arrange it, to monitor it, to make sure the person is showing up. Now, I'm not always dealing with the most reliable people that are going to show up from 9 to 5 either, and that can be frustrating for the people that are monitoring that. So we are somewhat limited, believe it or not, in the locations that probation can place people to do public service work. But that is always a consideration, an option that we can do, and it's something that can kind of give back to the community a little bit, so to speak. So that is something we do. It's generally done as a condition of probation, but we do have some limited resources, kind of like we were talking before. It's a limitation of resources there as well, but it is something we can do.
There's also a liability thing you got to worry about too, because if they
Sure.
get hurt while they're doing community service, county's picking up the medical, you know. So you got to worry about that too.
I'd like to make a few comments if I could. My name's Frank Harrison. I spent a little bit of time on Facebook, and till recently, till this certain page has been put up, I really wasn't aware of what was going on in the city. So I think a big misconception in a lot of people, they see the stuff on Facebook and it seems to be blowed up a lot bigger than what it really is. The thing that I have tried to do in the last couple of weeks myself is just go out late at night, drive around the community. If I see something, I'm going to make a call. I've only been out 4 or 5 times. Unfortunately, I haven't seen anything to make a phone call about. But I would like to know a little bit more about legalities as far as us taking it upon ourselves to go out in the community, drive around. If we see something, what do we do? Can we have a sticker on our car that says, community watch guy, or anything that we can all actually do? What I hear from everybody up here is we need to do this, or there's community organizations that are trying to do things. Name those for us. When you say that to me, I'm eager to do that, but if I walk out tonight, I don't know who to go see to be a part of that. I think some of the things that need to be done, like with the police department, you're really great about being transparent about everything, as you were saying, but also educate the community on the things that they don't know. Like you said, just because they're in the alley at 3:30 in the morning, that doesn't mean you can go arrest them. But I think everybody believes because they're out at 3:30 in the morning in the alley, you should go in and tackle them. I don't think people understand the laws like they need to, and I think a lot of this is just people not really understanding what you can and can't do. So if that was made clear to people, then they might understand things aren't as bad as they seem to be, and there are a lot of repeat people. And I don't know everybody's names that's on these Facebook forums, but I just put a thing up just to say, who's here tonight? All you people are complaining. How many of you are here? Okay? I wanted to be here tonight because I wanted to find out, what can I really do besides hear you say, we need your help? tell me what is it I can do.
And you're right, social media is a double-edged sword.
It is. It is. It can help.
Stuff gets blown out of proportion, it gets taken out of context. When the Facebook posts first start getting put up by a certain woman that lives around Washington Park, my wife and I spent 9 hours in the month of November and 14 hours in the month of December. My personal car, I was off duty, and I drove every one of those parks, Lindsay, Washington, Dorothy Miller. Used my own gas, my own vehicle. I had my wife with me. We just drove around. We pretended we were dating. And she accused me of being a cheap date just like before. But you know how many homeless people I found in the months of November and December, even though they kept posting Washington Park was a flood with homeless people? None. You know how many needles I found? None. You know? I understand when the social problem about dirty needles and HIV and the epidemic was going on in the 80s and 90s that people thought, well, we need to do something for the addicts, and they made these needles free and available. But, you know, they didn't think about the other side, what they're going to do with them. Now, Sheriff Holder's taken it upon himself. He's got a drop box both for prescription pills and for needles, you know, but you can't drag them there to dump their stuff, you know. And though the epidemic of meth is just terrible, and right now the cartels have got the price down so low that you don't hear about the state police or us raiding meth labs anymore. It's just not cost effective. And the punishment for that is just as great as possession of meth itself. You know, so if the cartels are undercutting everybody, the quality is more pure, it's more high. You know, we're not being able to take the meth off the streets the old-fashioned way by getting the lab done and then locking them up and then they go away. But the prescription drugs you guys can help us with. You know, the majority of those kids that are taking those opiates and stuff are getting them out of your medicine cabinets. You know, you hurt your knee and you're given a 30-day subscription or prescription, and you only use 15 days because you feel better, and you keep it up there in the cabinet, it disappears. You know, and it might not be your kid, but the kid that came over to visit that's snooping when he's in the bathroom is stealing them. You know, or some people just throw them away in the garbage. And like I said, you know, the Supreme Court's ruled that, you know, garbage is open game. You know, it's abandoned property. Anyone can go through it. So they go through the garbage and they find the pills, and, you know, they got more pills to do. You know, take them to the sheriff's department. You don't have to identify yourself. You drop them in a, lack of a better word, a mailbox that he has out there in the lobby, and you walk away and nobody's the wiser, you know. But we have to police ourselves too in our own homes, you know, and sometimes we're our own worst enemy, you know, because we don't want to get rid of those prescription pills in case you hurt yourself a couple of months later and you don't want to go back to the doctor. But I mean, I understand it, but it's amazing. My son graduated from Massac High School, you know, and he told me about a party that he went to where everybody bought pills out of their parents' medicine cabinet and they dumped it into a punch bowl. Nobody knew what it was. They swirled it around and everyone was supposed to take some, you know. And of course he left, you know. But I mean, it's stuff like that. I mean, kids experiment, you know. I'm a product of the 70s, you know, so you know, everything back then, you know, gone away. We thought LSD and all that other stuff would go away. Oh, it's coming back again, you know. It's just everybody, you know, makes that big circle. But that's just the little things that you can do is, you know, make sure your cabinets and stuff and your medicines are disposed of properly.
Back to my original question, where do we go to find out? Who do we talk to? What are our legalities as a citizen? What can we do?
I mean, as far as the going around at night and looking.
Yeah, let's just, for example.
Well, there are other attorneys here. I'll let them speak to that as well. But as far as you driving around lawfully at night, you see something calling the police, there's nothing illegal about that. Your other question, though, was organizations, and maybe that would be, because I've raised that. There is the Massac County Drug Awareness Coalition, which, in full disclosure, my wife is the executive director of. And they meet at the third Wednesday of every month at City Hall at 9:30 in the morning. They are an organization devoted to reducing substance abuse in the community. There's a Rotary Club, Kiwanis Club. Some churches have, and I don't want to try to name them all, What I would suggest, though, for my fear of missing something, the Metropolis Planet does an excellent job of putting in their paper what's happening in a given week, and it lists, or organizations for free can list what they're doing and invite people to attend, and a lot of those involve McDack or the various clubs in the community. So I would encourage you to look at that and see if there's something there that you could direct your efforts toward.
You know, and I think another thing citizens need to be aware of, if you leave your stuff out in the yard, you're asking for trouble. Okay? Put your stuff up. It won't disappear as quick. I'll leave it at that.
You know, 2 years ago, there was a single mom who lived by the tennis courts there on 5th Street. So her young kids, she didn't want them to see what Santa Claus was bringing. So she hid everything inside her SUV. The problem was she didn't lock it. And she left her purse in the car. Can we guess what happened?
What do you think?
You know, that's heartbreaking. You know, it is. But it's incumbent upon ourselves. This isn't the 50s no more. You know, June don't live next door to us, you know. We need to lock our doors, you know.
Times
Right.
have changed so much.
We need to lock the doors to our vehicles and make the kids put their bicycles back in the shed and lock the shed. And like I said, there's no better deterrent than a motion detector.
Right.
You know, you know, you're going to have to adjust it, you know, depending on where you live and the amount of wildlife that you have to make it less sensitive, unless you want that blaring in your eyes all night. But you know, the cameras, I mean, the people that have, I haven't been to a burglary call this year where when I walked up I saw a sign saying protected by ADT or ABT or whatever those companies are around here, you know, or a few that say protected by Smith & Wesson, but, you know.
I lived in Texas for a long time, and the law, the punishment changed if you posted a no trespassing sign on your property. It also, they have a thing, if it's before dark, and you can't shoot them. If it's after dark, you can shoot them. If it's near a school, the penalties are doubled or tripled. No, I'm not joking, I'm serious. That's why they say we don't call 911, we shoot you. And then we call 911. So what is it here in Illinois? Because I know we don't have that same kind of arrangement. Like if you post a sign, is the penalty doubled? Does it change? If someone's on your property and they're not supposed to be there?
Well, as far as that goes, as far as just talking strictly as far as trespassing, first of all, if you do have a no trespassing sign up in your yard, that does put people on notice that entry is forbidden, and if they enter upon that property, can be charged with criminal trespass to that property. Now, that doesn't mean if they step foot on your yard, you can start shooting either. And please don't do that. I'm just appointed, please don't do that. You know, you do have the right to defend yourself and defend your home. Now, if there's somebody that breaks into your home and you are in fear for your life, you obviously have the ability then to defend yourself. But, you know, just as far as shooting out a window or something like that, I don't walk through your yard, obviously that's something you can't do. But and you kind of brought this up a little bit about the community watch and the organization, and can you go approach somebody that's riding a bicycle in an alleyway? Can you do those things? Yes, you can. But I would caution you also, be very careful, because
I would make a phone call before I post.
yes, I would encourage you, if you see something like that, call the police. Don't take those matters into your own hands, because honestly, you don't know what you're getting into if you walk up on somebody. You don't know if they are on any type of substances. You don't know if they have a knife. You don't know if they have a gun with them. So I wouldn't encourage you to do anything that I wouldn't encourage my own family members to do. And so be very careful as far as that goes as well. But certainly if you're driving around and you see something that doesn't look right, call the police. Call the police. They will check that out.
You know your neighbors better than I will, you know. So if the next door neighbor never keeps her front door open, you know, and you come home from work and you see her front door open, and then you let the dog out and you come back and the front door is open, call us. We'll check it out. We'll knock on the door and make sure everything's okay. You know, that's not a big deal. I would rather do that than find out, you know, 2 weeks later she's bound and gagged or had a heart attack and just fell over and is living, you know, laying in the foyer. You know, that's what we're here for, you know.
with my house, I have my cameras, and Tom across the alley for his daughter, Antonia, has got cameras everywhere. So he's got the back of my house, I got his, and I got my neighbors. And we're pretty well protected. But we have a lot of traffic in our alley. But I've learned a long time ago that you can't see them because they got the hoodies on and stuff, but you can tell by the way they walk, their stature, everything. And but if they're on drugs, like you were saying, if you walk up one and he's on drugs, sometimes they're 10 times stronger. And I got into that.
Talking about a community watch, I'm going to let you know something right now. In the past couple of years, I don't know how many thousands of dollars we paid out in medical bills because we'll stand outside in a subway and see unbreakable glass getting broke by somebody's head or their hand. Or they take their hands and beat on the walls until they break their hands. And this is right after we arrest these people. These are the same people you're going to confront if you confront them in the alley. Okay? You want to do a neighborhood watch, this is what you're going to expect. Most of the people in my jail are in there for drug offenses. Most of it's meth. And when they're on meth, they might be a good guy yesterday or tomorrow, but tonight you're facing somebody who might be looking at the devil when he sees you. Okay? Now, most of the people in my jail are people from this community, and after they've been there 3 or 4 weeks, they're still good people. But that particular night that they got on meth, used drugs, they're completely different. Okay? Somebody's son, daughter, brother, sister, that's who we've got in our jail. And when they get out of jail, they've got no job, nowhere to go. What they're going to do, they're going to get right back on meth again. It costs money. And if they don't have the money, they're going to steal to get it. Yeah. So that's where the community has to come together. Because I'm seeing the same people over and over and over again. I got a 40-bed jail that stays full all the time with the same people. And as soon as they get out, Patrick and Josh prosecute them, they come right back because that's their life. That's all they know. It's a vicious cycle.
I wanted to ask a while ago too, because when you arrest these people and they're on drugs, and then say they're in jail for 5 days, you know, they're having all these things trying to, what's the word I'm hunting for? Withdrawals from the drugs. How do you deal with that? Or, you know, because that can, they say can kill you, you know, even being, so I mean, have you ever had an incident like that where somebody's got literally sick? Huh?
If they're too bad when they come in, a lot of times the state law says we have to take them to the hospital to get them medically cleared before they come in.
Yeah.
And then after they're in, we still have to take care of them. Our nurse has to take care of them.
Yeah.
The county's at thousands of dollars a year in medication to bring these people down under control.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always heard that when you withdraw, sometimes people even die from that, and that's just horrible, you know, and so I didn't know how you all would deal with that.
Well, I hate to say, but, you know, if we're lucky enough to keep somebody in jail for 6 months, they're clean when they get out.
Well, that's good.
Now, we don't know what's going to happen to them when they get out because they don't know where to go, but at least they're clean when they walk out the door.
Yeah.
But we've had to keep that person inside for 6 months.
Yeah.
You bring a good point, and the sheriff makes a good point. Where these guys see the criminal side, I get to see this and handle the civil side, okay? And there's a civil side to this as well. I met with, in fact, I spent quite a bit of time this afternoon with one of our officers. I'll give you just the story he's telling me. They get called to a local residence. This happens on a regular basis. A child, not a child, an adult, but an adult that lives with mom and dad still, is hyped up on some type of drug. What we were talking about today, we think was bath salts. But he hasn't committed a crime yet. He's just hiring a kite. He's threatening himself. He's going to do himself in, or he's going to do somebody else in. And so our officers have to take control of that person. And while they're still high, as the sheriff points out, we got to make sure they're medically stable. Yeah. So they take them to the hospital. Now, we have a community hospital. It's as fine as any there is, but it's not set up as a detox hospital. It's not set up as a detox center, and nor is it equipped to handle somebody that's out of control. I mean, the individual he was talking about today, well, at one point he believed he was the Secretary of State, okay, and that he was immune from arrest. And at another point, he believes that the government's after him and chasing him with helicopters and things. And so he hasn't committed a crime. We can't send him to jail, okay? The best we can hope to do is place him somewhere where we can safely bring him down. And that may take 6 hours. It may take all day or more. But in the meantime, an officer has to stay with this person because we've got to probably keep him handcuffed so he doesn't hurt anybody else or himself. And so there's a cost to that. That's taking one officer off the street for an extended period of time. That means there are other cases that aren't getting worked. And it comes back to, as Patrick said, resources. At the same time, it's occupying a great deal of mental health time. If they've got workers, they have to go out and see this person, but they can't really deal with him until they've kind of brought him down somewhat. We don't have, like most communities, it's very difficult to find what we need in the way of psychiatric services. So the hospitals struggle with that. The healthcare providers, you know, most of our doctors weren't trained in handling these types of situations. They're great at what they do. They're some of the best at internal medicine and family practice, but it wasn't. Their education and training wasn't in how to detox people or how to deal with people that are on these drugs. And so there are often calls that we deal with. The officer and I were talking today about what kind of resources could we as a community come together and pull together. McDAC's a fantastic resource, but they don't have a facility, okay? Mental health is a fantastic resource, but they really don't have a facility. It's not like the old days. We can't just throw them in the drunk tank. The sheriff will tell you that because we're responsible. He's responsible. The county's responsible for these people. The city doesn't have a facility to just throw somebody into. And you couldn't just throw them in anyway. It would have to be properly equipped and properly maintained and operated. Or we would face considerable civil liability. And the standards for a facility like that are much higher than even the standards for a jail. And the standards for a jail today are much higher than they were back when we had a jail on the 3rd floor of the courthouse. It's just, it is a question of resources. And that's that wasn't an isolated instance. The officer came because that's happening every couple of weeks now, at least. And sometimes, I think he was telling me they've probably seen 6 to 10 of those cases in the last couple of months. So,
And then he had a juvenile into it.
yeah, and if the person's underage, then we've got real issues. There are limits in the law as to how long a person can be committed involuntarily, and there's a process that takes multiple hearings and multiple professions brought in to bear on it before that can happen. So there aren't any simple solutions to these problems. And like I say, they're not. Unfortunately, we can't just lock them up, and it wouldn't do any good if we did, because that's not the treatment it's going to take. As the other fellows have alluded to, it's going to take treatment, and those resources don't exist here locally. We have, yes, people point to resources over in Paducah, but the state of Illinois doesn't pay the state of Kentucky to use its resources to treat Illinois residents. Okay, that won't happen. The best we can sometimes hope for is to get them into limited spaces. Most of those are quite a ways away from here, and that really doesn't happen very quickly. The other thing we see, because the questions come in about, well, what about, they all comment, if you see something, say something. I think the other thing that has to be noted is if something's missing, you've got to report it. One of the officers and I had a conversation the other day about we'd witnessed a sizable number of what appeared to be bicycles being cut up at a local location. Well, yeah, we all see it, but the problem is none of those have been reported as stolen. So unless they belong to somebody else, they can't take them. Mr. Stratmeyer can't prosecute them for a theft. They didn't steal something if it didn't belong to somebody else. And so without a community that's willing to report when these things happen, when a bicycle's stolen or when a garden bench is stolen or something, and in some way identify it too. Now, I know the police have a program for helping people put insignia on their bicycles and mark things. They can do that and help you do that and log those things. But without people reporting, it does no good.
And even the stuff that you don't think is relevant. We had, well, actually, Mr. Adams was one of the victims of his propane tank being stolen. Well, what color is a propane tank? They're almost all white or they're all tan. Well, we recovered almost 200 of them on a house we were abating, just a block away from the police station, you know? But none of them were identified. If you just spray paint your name on the bottom of it or put an orange dot on it or something where we can identify and bring it and get it back to you. But we got 200 propane tanks. Now what the knucklehead was doing was he had a propane heater in the house he was living in because his utilities are shut off for non-payment. So he was stealing the LP tanks to heat his house. And then when he was done, he was knocking off the nozzles, taking them down to Holtz and selling them for scrap. You know, so do we know he's the thief? Absolutely. But we can't prove it because, you know, none of those tanks had any unique identifiers on them that we could say they belong to Joe or Jerry or whoever, you know, so.
Yeah, I think we need to really remind people that when they get their child a new bicycle or an old bicycle, don't register it with the police department. I mean, I never
charge anyone for
I
it,
never
you know?
did that. Of course, we didn't have the crime back when I had kids, but everybody needs to be encouraged to do that. You know.
One of the main things that, as far as property on your own property, in a given day, think about it. Well, it's going to be dark when you go. In your neighborhood, tomorrow, drive your neighborhood, or if you're going to go to work or what, just look at the personal property now that's laying out in your front yard. Bicycles, lawnmowers, that may have a bucket over the top of it, but it's still right out in the open. We're encouraging thieves to be what they're good at, and that's steal. If it's worth having, it's worth putting up. It's a whole lot to get it out of your garage or out of your shed than it is out of your front yard or side yard. And a lot of it is just habit. The children are children. So when they come in from riding their bike, they put it beside the steps and go in the house. If we don't get anything else out of this, we've got a lot of good information here tonight. And Mr. Strottmeyer's probation, I will dedicate the city of Metropolis. If they can get these people and get them where they can actually get out and they're on probation, many of them we can use in the city of Metropolis. We have supervisors, you know, they're capable of cleaning your ditch out and raking leaves and whatever. It helps us a little bit, and certainly it might help these young people or older people or whatever to give them something to do, just to get their mind off of what's going on. And one thing I do want to encourage everybody here tonight is pay attention to your neighbors. You know, when you talk about foot traffic, most of you know where I live. You haven't seen any foot traffic if you go to my house. I got 42 apartments across the street from me. I have another 40 beside that, and then I got the Spence apartments behind me with one place to get from one street to the other street, and that's through my property. So far, it's been pretty good. You know, a lot of foot traffic, but they don't bother much. But be conscious of the, yeah, I've got my stuff locked up too. Of the young lady or the young man that's by themselves, living in the neighborhood, an older person that's by themselves, you know, maybe they don't have to worry so much. Check on them. If there's something unusual, step out. I mean, you don't have to pull a gun on the guy or threaten them or anything like that. Hey, you got business over there? Most of the time they don't have any business over there. They're going to leave. So, you know, we can help each other and help the police department and law enforcement and state's attorneys and everybody if we just kind of help each other. and stuff like that. City metropolises don't no different now. I'm just telling you. If you want something stolen, you get you a sign and put on a house that says, property of the city metropolis, keep out. Within 15 minutes, they'll steal everything in it. You don't have to worry about demolition. They'll carry it all off, young lady.
I just wanted to maybe address the group instead. My name's Cassandra, and y'all can take this or leave it. I think the gentleman up here have done a great job talking about, well, you all too, about proactivity, how we're going to be proactive instead of reactive. That's really the best thing that we can do as a group, is just be proactive. We talked about understanding the laws, how we can understand the bonds being set, the charges people can be filed with. We need to talk maybe about respect, how these people work for us. They still deserve respect as they're doing the best that they can. They're also citizens of this town. They're proud of our town. They're proud of our county. I think what we can talk about now is compassion. These people that we are talking about were victims themselves, kind of circumstance. A lot of people in our town were born by drug-addicted women who used the entire time they were pregnant. These people were born without a chance. They don't have a home life. They've been on the streets since they were children, the age of my children. I went to school with these people from kindergarten till the time I graduated high school here at Massac. I worked with the community. I work with the best people in the town. I work with the lowest, I work with the lowest people in the town and all the other people in between. And I love them all the same. I try to reach out to people when they're at the lowest of the low, and I let them know they're important and that they matter. And sometimes you may be the only person they hear that from. So I understand that we are all victims here. I live on Catherine Street, and my kids have lost 4 bicycles. I'm just as angry as you all are. But I also see people that need us. And maybe if they had a little bit of hope, maybe they could become better too. Like I said, take that or leave it. But I think, proactivity and understanding and respect. We need to respect each other also. We all may have different opinions of how we can do things and make it better. But I think compassion is also something that we should work on as a group. And then that kind of fits into proactivity. Whenever you're compassionate, you can also be proactive. And that's all.
Very good. Okay, I'm going to interrupt here. I don't know if there's any more questions about crime, but there are other people here that's wanting to discuss some other things with the city.
One more thing.
Okay.
I do want to say that, we did listen. I wasn't there at the first meeting. I was at another meeting out of town that night. But since then, we partnered or repartnered with the state police and the county, and we've done joint patrols, and the city police have concentrated more on the alleys and the stuff at night. We're not on maybe the main drags as much as we used to, but we're in the back ways. But one of the other partners, I sit on the board for the Southern Illinois Drug Task Force, and there's a person in the back, Master Sergeant Rick Morris. He's with the state police. He is the supervisor for Zone 7, which covers the southern 32 counties, Southern 7, yeah. Counties of Illinois. And he's going to just touch on a little bit of some of the plans we talked about last week and the joint stuff that we're going to do. Sometimes I get calls, about, and this is a perfect example that I told the mayor about. He got a chuckle on it. We were getting calls about a suspicious vehicle parked near 3rd and Catherine, and it was a van, and the lady got upset, and she took a picture of it. Well, that was one of our undercover guys. But I couldn't tell her that, so because I couldn't tell her that, she was getting even more mad and accusing us of being worthless and not doing anything. And she posted a really nasty post on Facebook, but I just had to bite my tongue, which is hard for a guy from Chicago to do, He tells me all the time I got to be from the jungle. But you know, just because you don't see us all the time, don't mean we're out there. We're not driving. Not all of us are driving marked police cars for a reason. But I'll let her talk with him. They're working on a shooting case that he's probably got to get heading down to too. So,
like the chief said, we had the Southern Illinois Drug Task Force down here. It's been sponsored by the State Attorney's Office, by the Sheriff's Department, and by Metropolis PD. Hardin County has also pitched in on that. We've been for 3 years now, I think. We've had an officer assigned to us. We're working on getting another one from some federal funding. The last year's been rough for the task force down here. We have lost 2 officers that were out for 10 months and 7 months for medical issues. So we're down to bare bones. But I will tell you this, if nobody's told you, there are drugs in Metropolis, and there are drugs in Massac County. So I'm glad everybody's sitting down. But it is not as bad as you would believe. They are there. They're always a problem. And we focus more of our efforts for the drug task force out of Bowling in Massac and Metropolis than I think any other county we work. And we work all 7 down here in the Southern 7. So you're getting the most of our attention. There are going to be some changes starting February 1st. I'm going to go back and work narcotics full time and probably look like a scumbag like I did back in the day. And I'm bringing some new plans. I don't know if I'm going to get into them just yet, but you're going to see us. Well, you're going to see us, but not see us. We're going to be here. We're going to be changing the way we do things a little bit. We're going to be a lot more proactive. Historically, when we run investigations take long. So when you call and you say, my neighbor's kid or the house 2 doors down, they got all this traffic coming in and out, and this and that, and these are the license plates, we hear you, and we're using that information. Because you call, we're not like the city PD, we don't show right up in our unmarked trucks and knock on doors and pull people out and take them to jail. That's not what we do. We have a wide array of things we do. We work with the State Attorney's Office all the time. We take cases federally. We've taken cases out of Metropolis federally, and I think addressed a big problem here about a year ago. So we are going to be spending a lot more time here. You will see us without seeing us. You're getting the most of our attention, and it's going to pick up.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
it's not like TV. We just don't get to solve these things in 60 minutes, you know.
But you know, we do have another alderman here tonight, Mr. Canada, and I would not do him justice if I didn't acknowledge this is what a community can be and stuff like that. We have a Boy Scout leader here tonight and 2 Boy Scouts. You know, that does let us know.
No, we're here actually. They're fulfilling a requirement for a merit badge. They had to come. No, I say that.
They don't have any chains on. So
it's part of community service. They got in trouble. No, one of the requirements is to come to where there's a difference of opinion, either like a school board meeting or, we spoke about coming to like a city council meeting. The beautiful thing is they're getting to see the interaction between the community and the elected representatives for the community and the people who are appointed to the community. Chief, I appreciate your presence in the community with the youth. When we've had dances and whatnot here, you show up, you've come to some of the scouting events. The youth know who you are, and I think that has been a beneficial thing for the youth in the community. I think most of the kids that I've dealt with in the Scouts, everybody knows who you are. I know you all do the big thing at the end of the summer for the community. So, I appreciate all you guys do. I think that things like that are going to be beneficial for, the community as well, with some of these other issues that are going on. Just to know that you all are there in more of a capacity than just the thumb down. You guys are there for the thumbs up to, help the youth in the community as well.
Any other questions for me?
where do you think you're going?
There were some of the citizens that were wanting to to talk on other subjects such as cleanup of the town, houses that are falling down. Some of the people asked that I would bring that up.
Happy
And,
to address that.
huh?
I'll be happy to address
Okay, good.
All right.
So if anybody's got any questions on that, I know that's putting everybody on the spot, but any questions about any certain place that you think needs care or anything, please feel free to ask.
Before we even get into
Okay.
that, here's the process.
Okay.
If you got not all dwellings are to be demolished. There's difference of categories of monetary amounts of money that an individual has. We have people that live in a mobile home that's worth $3,000, but it's clean, the yard's mowed, and they're doing the best they can do. There's nothing wrong with those people now, and we should not look down on them. And we've got people that live in a $300,000 house that looks like a piece of crap. But it's all in the individual. And that's because they have no civil pride. You shouldn't, the city metropolis should not have to make you mow your grass. It is uncalled for. Get tired of it. That is, it's just frustrating.
I know.
Just because you don't like the way your neighbor's house looks, don't make it bad. And maybe they're doing the best they can do, but maybe we can help them. Hey, City Hall's bought gallons of paint before for people that couldn't afford paint. We just pass the hat around. We buy 10 gallons of paint. Here's paint. Paint your house. There's a lot of houses in Metropolis that need to be torn down. It takes money. Not only in the city, county. We have county houses in the city that's been taken over for lack of taxes payment. You see these little signs. It says, buy this house, $600. Okay.
Can you really buy it for $600?
Sure. But then you go out and tear it down. It costs you $3,500. And then you got a lot that you can't do anything with except mow the grass. So it's not a real good deal. But we in the city, and Mr. Abel will tell you, a normal house, if it does need to be demolished with holes in the roof, no windows and no doors, that needs to be demolished. But it'll take anywhere from 6, 8 months, sometimes more than that, to get it through the court systems. Then the city metropolis will foreclose on it. Then we get to tear it down and spend $5,000, and we end up with a lot that you can't get $500 for, and then we get to mow it to the rest of the life of that lot, because nobody on either side wants it, because they don't want to mow the grass either.
You pay taxes on it.
So it's kind of it's kind of a losing battle. I commend so many people in the city that will buy a home and do some work on it, bring it back up for rehab, whether they're going to rent it or whether they don't rent it or whatever. But at least it should be better. Another thing that hurts our community, and I'm not picking on anybody, but it's the truth, is landlords that take advantage of poor people. They're doing the poor people are doing the best they can do, and they're being charged $300 to $700 for a piece of property that's not fit to live in.
Or be next door to your house.
Yes, ma'am.
$2,000 in taxes.
That's right. We all have the same issues. It started in 07, 08 in the housing thing, and we all lived through it. Foreclosures every place. We're dealing with those right now. And it's just getting to the point. But the bad part about it, every neighborhood, from the very best neighborhood to the very worst, is having these single dwellings pop up where mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, whomever has died, passed away. Everyone who lives in it lives in California, or Wells Fargo owns it, or whatever. So it's not an easy. It's It's not as bad as drugs, but it is a problem in the community. You know, it is a problem in the community. You know, the proper way to do it is when you see these houses, make a note, get an address, call the office. We do have a full-time abatement officer. Now then, we have contracted another gentleman that is doing nothing but houses. He's not worried about the grass. He's not worried about anything like that. Mr. Abel gives him a list of homes. We have a licensed plumber now. He don't work for us. Well, he does jobs for us, but and a licensed electrician. So we send him. He checks the plumbing. They check the, you know, whatever. If it's not livable, then we start foreclosure on it. But it does take time, and it takes money. What we're trying to do is, we just sold a home that we owned on Devers Road. That house brought $49,900, $41,900. All right. Every dime of that $41,900 will not go into the general fund of the city metropolis. That goes in a program that will help you tear down a home. You own a home, come down to the office, I'll give you an application. It's good for $1,500 out of pocket expenses. For a home, garage, trailer, it does help. So take the names, take the addresses, bring it by the office, call the office, tell Daniil, tell Jan, and we're working, you know, as good as we can and as fast as we can.
Well, I'd like to ask, like, coming in Fifth Street, coming into town, there are a lot of nice houses. People keep their yards up. There's one little group, a couple of blocks over there, that the houses, like the roof is sinking in or the front porch is sagging and they need paint. Can the city or a group of people, if they wanted to, reach out to those people and say, hey, we'll pay for the paint like you say you're doing, or we'd like for you to get your porch lifted up where it's not sagging in the middle, just for all the people that come to Metropolis for the boat and Superman, whatever, that road coming in would look nice, really nice. And almost every house is nice, but there is a few actually on the other side of the street, bunch of nice houses and bad houses. Is it legal for even a citizen to approach these people?
It's probably legal. I'm not a lawyer. Mr. Abel tells me all the time I'm not. I tell him he's not married. So is it legal or whatever? Yeah, probably. But unfortunately, in many cases, and we're not trying to stereotype anybody, but you're going to spend your money, you're going to buy your paint, you're going to sweat and do this and that and something else, and a year from now it'll be the same mess it is now. You cannot preach. You can't make people most of the time what they're not. And like I said, there's not many people out here, and there's a whole lot of us sitting around here that grew up pretty dang poor. I can tell you one thing we always had around our house. The grass is always mowed if you wanted to go anyplace. That's part of the deal. And there was no discussion. There was no discussion. Saturday, if the yard wasn't mowed and the garden wasn't doing this, you didn't go anyplace. We're living in a different society and things like that, and I understand all that. But does that answer any of that question? There is ways to do it. If you'll come by my office, if you'll call me on the telephone, if you'll call, we'll do it. Mr. Harris, sir.
A question about lay law. The building that sits there, can you tell us?
I can.
Can you fill us in on what's
I cannot tell you anything I'm proud of, but I can tell you. Lay law right now is in the operation. Friends of Fort Massac actually own that piece of property. They are in the process of right now of getting another brownfield grant. And Christy could speak to that. Christy Stevenson is in the back. She's actually helping the Friends with that grant cycle and stuff like that. Bad thing about that, I think this grant, Christie, is only for partial demolition of hazardous material. Is that right? Or
No, it's a little more broad than that, but it's the DRA, and the grant cycle hasn't been open yet, and this federal shutdown is not helping that situation. But we have folks making sure that they get that grant applied for.
but it is in the process.
I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I belong to that group.
Okay.
And that is,
And
this
they've
grant
applied
will
for
be
a
to get
grant.
the asbestos and the lead paint out.
Yeah.
Nothing
At
else,
least.
and a new grant will have to be applied for to tear down the building.
Well, and I actually, as part of UN's, I actually belong to a board in McCracken County called the PACRO Board, and we actually have designated, the city of Metropolis took $50,000 out of that grant that can be used to help the Friends of Fort Massac with that. Now, when they get their money between what we've, hopefully it needs to go. It needs to go. It's very, very depressing to our community when you come into town. And believe me,
Superman, and you look to the left and
we have so much in Metropolis to be proud of. We've got a lot more to be proud of than we have to be sorry about. And I'm happy about that. But anyway, there is a process on houses. It does take a while. We have a full-time abatement officer. We have a guy now. We have a new program in the clerk's office. If a house has been without power and utilities for an extended length of time, we are now sending a licensed plumber, a licensed electrician, to make sure that that house is habitable, to be able to rent safely before the power's turned back on. We're controlling a little bit of what's going on with our bad homes and stuff like that, but what we're really doing is just compounding our vacant house issue of places that need to be torn down. So, you know, one side kind of helps, one side kind of hurts, but anyway, that has to do with
I got
houses.
two more things that's been on my mind. Okay, number one, let's see, 7th Street. The cat guy, can't think of his name now. But down through there, almost every building in town is looking really good, and I am proud of our uptown merchants, what they have done. That one street, though, on down there, you know, it's got a few things that need to be done with it. Now, Roseanne Wilkins and I had talked to, I can't think of his name, runs the lawnmower place there on Ferry.
Mr. Williams.
Yeah, right there where his awning's all down. And we called him, and we were going to do this. We just have to take that awning down. And then Roseanne and I was going to make a new awning for it because we can't afford to buy one. But we got to get somebody to take it down, and we got to have the time to do it. But there's just, and then, what's his name? The guy with the cats. I mean, that's bad. You know, but basically that street looks good except for those two places.
I agree.
Okay. Now, like I said, I talked to Mr. Williams. I told him we were going to do this, and did he care? Well, of course, no, he's not going to care. But so that's a street I'd like to see the city maybe try to encourage some of that. I don't know. But one other place I got to say is the old hummus drugstore, which is driving me insane. Which is a short trip, but anyway, we have just so much of it. I mean, it's brick, so there's not really a lot that needs painting. And with our little group that we had for a long time, we haven't said much about Let's Grow Metropolis. We still have some money in that we would be glad to buy the paint. But could the city notify those people? Because I don't really know. I understand there's a dispute with the property there somehow, and I don't want to get in that. But I mean, we would be glad to buy the paint if they would just paint the white part of it and make it look better.
There is a program uptown that has been in operation for well over 2 years. You shouldn't have to buy paint.
Yeah.
You need to probably stay out of that. Save your money to buy cat food or something.
Well, we will.
Anyway, all you've got to do is apply. There's a grant. We have a certain amount of money in that grant. A property owner doesn't really have to own the property. That you need a new awning, you need paint, new glass window, whatever. you fill out the grant work and stuff like that, we'll pay up to,
$2,500.
yeah.
It's a
And that's what
50-50
you did at
match.
town.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know
Well-
about
Well,
that.
we've expanded to the side streets as well.
Yeah, you
We
have.
have gone the other way,
Yeah,
so.
you have.
But you'd be surprised now, and don't ask me why, that they will not apply for that. They'd rather leave it,
Looking like that.
you can't make them, I don't guess, but anyway,
Well, but you
there is things available for streetscape, remodeling, you know, but you still, the people still have to have the initiative to want to make it better.
Well, I don't know who actually owns that. They said there is a dispute over who actually owns what, or is it Hummus? That's what somebody told me.
The Summers boy actually owns it, and he's
Yeah.
working in there.
And he's got an ongoing project in the store. Yeah.
I saw the wood lights on
He
tonight.
just, in fact, acquired the entire warehouse of architectural furnishings.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, out of Evansville. It's an ongoing project. We've actually put money into that project to help him, and we've offered to put more, and we'll put more into that project.
Absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, it's
It's
a
gonna be
fantastic building. It will be.
It is
Yeah, yeah. If we can have enough time to allow him to get his work done and city function
And he
as
works
it's
a
supposed to.
full-time job too.
So
And
you
does
are
this.
working on that?
Absolutely.
Oh, good.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a project that's underway. As far as the Catman goes, we actually have not been able to get into that property. We can't just walk into properties, okay? No more than the police can walk in for a criminal matter. We can't walk in on a civil matter. We don't just get to walk in. It takes a search warrant if we want to go in on a civil matter as well. But what we have been able to do, we were able to get some pictures because, if you know, the paper kind of fell down on the Catman's property. So we wrote it up as we have to under the law. But then it came time to serve him, and he's avoided service. The police have made every effort you can think of to serve this gentleman, and he wouldn't pick up certified mail. So as soon as we get him served with the notice and he's had his time, then we'll have to go to court and file and ask the court to order us into it, and also him to abate all the junk. But that's what it takes. Unfortunately, we don't get to suspend the Constitution, and those people have rights. And frankly, when they know you're after them, they just avoid you, basically.
But they're not supposed to live in a storefront. And
No.
the cat smell would have to be horrible.
No, he's not grandfather.
What'd you say?
Sorry,
You want me to
he's
serve
Somebody
the
lied.
papers? I can serve them.
Well, I was
not.
going to say,
Well, Jan's offered to serve him because he'll come talk to her occasionally.
well, he's at Harvey's all the time.
Please, he avoids our abatement people. He avoids everybody. Yeah.
Well, I will tell you all a little story, and maybe Harry knows about this. We had a conflict over a kitten. Somebody called us and dropped up there because he has about 30, 40 cats in that alley. So we go up there to get the kitten because the other cats. Well, in the meantime, Don is his name. He had already said he was taking the cat. But he left it in a box outside Hardee's by the drive-thru, and the cat was out and going to get hit by a car. So we reach down and we get it. He comes out of Hardee's and throws himself on the hood of my friend's car. He is laying face first. We are making eye contact, and it's like, oh, we don't know what to do. And because he was not going to give up that cat. So the police came, and they said, well, you know, blah, blah, blah. Go ahead and let him have the cat. And he said, but we're going to be doing something about that. And if you see any cats out in the alley and you want them, you take them. You know, which we want to take them, have them spayed and neutered because, you know, that program's going on. But he is nuttier than a fruitcake.
Well, and that's good. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to make a motion that we adjourn.
Okay.
But most of everybody here has worked all day.
Yeah.
I know you all have worked all day and part of the night. I do appreciate everybody being
Well,
here.
we appreciate you coming.
You know,
we really, because we all need to be
But
friends on
anyway,
this. And
you know, we need to
and,
get these guys got to work tomorrow.
yeah, I know they do.
Summarize tonight's meeting. Well, I think it was a good start. You know, the problem with social media is there's really no checks and balances, and things just seem to get blown out of proportion, or the same thing gets reported or complained about by multiple people, and instead of it being treated as one incident, all of a sudden now it's a calamity. I think it's a good start. You know, a lot of times they don't know what we're doing because we can't talk about it. Just like the press conference we did a couple months ago, you know, with McCracken County and the U.S. Attorney down in Kentucky. you know, that investigation, there was people that we've been working on it for 8 months. You know, we can't talk about it, but they want to know what we're doing, you know, and sometimes you just can't tell them. And like the other example with the undercover officer down, you know, by the library, you know, I mean, we just can't talk about that. And, you know, TV hurts us, you know, everyone thinks we can solve everything in 60 minutes or that CSI, those tools are real, you know, that we could come up with all those different results and stuff, which we just can't. But, you know, I look at the stats, you know, and I'm not going to say we don't have problems, but when you compare our crime rate with similar towns of the same population, we're not out of whack. You know, we do have our problems. And I'm willing to bet 90% of the problems we have either have an alcohol or a drug nexus. You know, the people that are stealing for a fix, you know.
But there's been a sudden spike.
Right.
What is that?
And I think a lot of it is because of the community involvement. We're able to catch more people because we're getting called. It was nothing like last year before we started advertising and putting out the message to call us when it's going on, that people will come to the police station to say, my kid's bike was stolen. There was a guy with a gray hoodie hanging around the house. Right. And, you know, when you question it, was 2 or 3 days ago. And they finally got fed up and decided they were going to report it. Well, it's kind of hard to solve those, you know. Or when I'm talking to groups like this and they'd say, you know, last Wednesday I saw a person hanging around my neighbor's shed and, you know, he had no business being there. And that makes me mad. And then when you say, well, did you call? Well, no, we didn't want to bother you. Well, you know, it's that kind of stuff that gets a little frustrating. And then there's just some people that just like getting on social media and stirring the pot, you know. I mean, they just, I'm not saying they're making the stuff up, but I don't know if they're hallucinating either, you know, because, you know, they'll call on stuff and we check and we just find no evidence of it, you know. And, you know, we're a small town, but, you know, we cover it pretty well. And we're a small police department, you know. There's only 13 sworn officers. On the average, there's only 3 officers working a shift. You know, so I mean, we can only go so far. So if we don't have the help from the community, you know, then we become reactive instead of proactive, and you know, reactive doesn't always work.
Touch upon the one message that I think everyone would agree upon. What do you think that one message to the community this week?
Get involved. You know, to lock your stuff up, to be proactive, take a little ownership in your property. You know, and watch out for your neighbor. You know, I always put it out, you know, when we're going to have extreme cold or extreme heat, you know, watch out for your elderly people. You know, bring your pets inside, you know, and that kind of stuff. But that should be a community process all year round. If you know your neighbor next door is in their 80s and they're limited mobility or whatever, it doesn't hurt to check on them because sometimes they do fall and can't get up. You know, it's not just a TV commercial. And the more that we interact, you know, when I grew up in the neighborhood that I grew up in Chicago when I was young, you know, it was nothing to be disciplined by Johnny's mom. She'd call my mom. By the time I got home, I was getting whacked again. Then when she told Dad when I got home, I got grounded, you know, and double, triple jeopardy, you know, for the same thing. But, you know, everybody watched out for everybody. We had our own cues before social media. We knew what it meant when the street lights came on. You know, no one had to tell us what time we had to be home. You know, we knew to be home when the street lights are on, you know, or at least check in and, you know, and find out what we're doing, you know. But neighbors knew one another, you know. We had block parties and, you know, when it was lunchtime, whose ever house we were playing with at the time, that's where we ate lunch, you know, and it just worked out, you know. And
I live in an apartment complex. I've been there almost 13 years. Don't know the names of none of my neighbors.
Yeah, see, that's a shame. And you know, and I believe in community relations. You know, I've instituted, you know, the community block party at the last day of the swimming pool. You know, we jumped on trick or treat with the DNR, you know, and that's turned into a huge event. You know, we have our own little charity thing that we don't try to do the major holidays because the churches and everyone else takes care of that. But if we hear of, you know, a person having if we hear that we have a person that's house caught fire or whatever, we'll go out and we'll buy socks and underwear and a jacket or whatever, for the kids. And we don't advertise a lot of it because we just don't want to embarrass the people, But Weekend Blessings, we really jumped in on that, We're probably the biggest supporter for Weekend as far as bringing in the canned goods and the foods and and the cash, But that's I just think that's just as important as locking people up, and believe me, I have no problem at all using my handcuffs, But if we can affect the little guys before they become the big guys, that's the only way we're going to break the cycle. It is. I mean, I don't want to call the parents a lost cause, but a lot of those parents are a lost cause. It's their lifestyle. They're not going to change. So.